So in reality, Roger, you were chosen by high-powered demon spirits to be a part of their human, special, privileged group.
You see, these people in Montreal, the society, like the priest mentioned, there's thousands of spirit worshippers in only different societies of spirit worshippers in this world. But he says, we are the elite. We know the real truth about the Master and his angels. And they're not hideous-looking beings. They are gorgeous creatures. And from the paintings that they had on the wall of walls of that worship room, they were unique beings. Especially there was a painting full size, full-length painting of the fallen Lucifer above his altar. And that was very fascinating, because he looked like a man of great intellect, high forehead, the way that he looked with his eyes, the way he had the eyes looking. It gave you a depth of perception of somebody that is very, very knowledgeable and
powerful.
Powerful, yeah.
So Roger, this high priest that you talked about, he is the one that ushered you down into the worship room. Was he also the one that led out in the praise sessions that you talked about?
Yes, and he had an assistant also, another priest.
Okay. The high priest would say a number of things to you when you were in these praise services, and you went to a number of them over a period of time. Talked about the issues of the great conflict. You've already touched on that a little bit. I want you to follow up on that a little bit more, Roger. Some of the things that you wrote in your book, Trip into the Supernatural, sounds a whole lot like what we as Christians today know as the Great Controversy. What were some of the things that he told you there?
Well, he says that there is a great controversy going on between the force of good and evil, between Christ and Satan. And they always praise the great master, Satan, as a super intelligent being that he is, beautiful to behold, and if he ever appears to you, you won't be able to look upon him because it'll be too bright. It'll just ruin your vision. And they talk about many, many things in regards to, who's going to win this conflict.
Any discussion about fire and brimstone?
Yes. He says, the Bible people, talking about the Christians, they read in the Bible that, we're all going to land in a lake of fire and this and that. So that's baloney. He says the conflict is going to end peacefully. Christ is going to realize that you might as well abdicate the rights of this planet, take his few people on with him to his planet in the center of the galaxies, and we will be left with a master who will resurrect all his people that will be as numerous as the sand of the sea. See? And the master will rule forever and ever and ever. A happy people. And he named some of the people that's going to be there. I don't want to mention the names because they're known to history. Yeah. So that was quite impressive.
Did you always feel, Roger, that these people were telling the truth?
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, they really had things down straight. But I was not satisfied with the answers. And there was something, and I understand now, it was the Spirit of God saying, hold back, fellow. Hold back. And the priest had talked about us thinking seriously about being initiated into their cult.
Right. So they let you come to sort of take a look-see, but you can't go back for several months.
Oh, yeah. It's not a matter of whether you're going to be initiated or not.
It's when.
Or there was no way out. Because that's what we're told.
You knew at that time.
Yeah.
So you were moving forward more on fear.
More on fear, yes. Because the high priest said that the master had special plans for us in our lives. And that no one ever went into this society unless they were invited by the spirits. See, so that was made very clear. And he also expressed to us the danger, explained to us the danger of going against the will of the spirits. And he mentioned about this one man and his wife that live in a fireproof building in Montreal. The place burned right down with him in it. He was one of their members that had decided that, well, he wanted to think things over. He was not going to get initiated at a time that the Spirit said he would like him to be initiated into the society.
So they began to press you for a commitment.
So the priest said, look, fellas, I'm not going to pressure you into anything, okay? But I want to show you what the Spirit can do for a devoted servant. We went downstairs, not through the staircase that I thought the worship room of the gods, but at the other end of the building. Went downstairs, and a number of times I'd gone there to the men's room, and I heard these typewriters clicking like the dickens. Man, it's going. I said, why do we have a lot of people typing in there, in that room? Well, we went there that evening, and he knocked, and the man says, come on in. And there was all those typewriters moving along by themselves, typing at the speed that I'd never seen before. And not only that, the high priest says, I want to show you something clever. So he says, follow me. So we went around that table. There was like 2 long tables, and they had about 10 typewriters. And he says, now notice that the typewriter types to the right, then doesn't go back. It types back to the left. Isn't that something? I had never heard of things like that before. He said the Spirits are doing the work. And he introduced us to the man. And the man is a lawyer. And he said, how much money did you make last year? Oh, he says, send us 6 figures. You see?
So this lawyer had a business in the building that housed the worship room.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a whole room full of typewriters.
Yeah.
And he put paper in there, and demons
That's all he did. Put typewriter paper in there. It was
and what came out? What was it that came out?
different briefs for court cases.
And so he would sell these to people?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He had this service to the legal profession.
And the high priest was
The United
showing
States and Canada.
So the high priest was showing you this to give you an idea about the kinds of blessings that you would
That's
receive?
right. Yeah.
But after you left that typewriter, the room where the lawyer was, they tried to draw you into a commitment by getting you to make a public profession. Tell us about that.
Well, they have a super beautiful resort in the Laurentian Mountains, which is north of Montreal, north of Saint Agathe. Saint Agathe is a famous name there in Montreal. Montrealers, they all go Saint Agathe or north there, you know, the summer home and that. So they had a big resort up there for their people, you know. So it's a closed society. And they had on October the 30th, Halloween, is that?
October 31.
31, last day of October. They had what they call live animal sacrifices. I don't know what it is, but they did. We could never find out. By the time that the Lord pulled me out of there, I had not yet found out what it was. So you have this intrigue involved in there. And he talked about three very unique services that I attended there that stayed on my mind forever. One was entitled Christian Idolatry. Another one was entitled The Super Deception of a Glorious New Age, which actually applies to the New Age today. And this was 1946 that we're talking. And then the other one was Satan's Great General Council of the 1700s. And I must say the things that I heard there was an eye-opener. First of all, we'll go through the Great General Council.
Okay.
At the beginning of the 1700s, said the high priest, Satan and all his spirit counselors held a Great General Council with one purpose in mind. It was to prepare for the great industrial age that was soon to break upon the world. And Lucifer also foresaw another age that was to follow that, where tremendous scientific discoveries would be made by people, and we would enter a unique age that would change the way that everybody lives. It would also serve to usher in the end times and the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. And the priest said that Lucifer had been studying the Bible, And he found in Daniel 12:4, where we are told about the time of the end, many shall run to and fro, knowledge shall be increased. He understood it to be that we're getting to that point. And he had, with all the spirit counselors, to change their modes of operation in order, to ensnare people. And to devise a way whereby people would disqualify themselves from being members of Christ's kingdom.
And he was just very candid about this.
Oh, yeah.
Telling you and the rest of the group, 60 or 70 people there, the plans that
Close to 100 people.
Lucifer had revealed to him.
And by the time the council came to a close, they had 3 major policies that were going to be followed. First, they were to see to it that humans would be made to believe that Satan and his angels do not really exist. Because up to that time, you could walk down a street of Paris and you would have signs that would say where you have a soothsayer or a fortune teller of some type, and if you want to put a curse on someone, you could go and see this other old lady over there, the old witch, that's the way it goes. But now it had to change. Lucifer says we have to make sure that people, humans, get to believe that Satan and his angels do not really exist.
Roger, that's interesting because a recent research study report that I read indicated that in a national survey, I believe it's over 75% of people do not really believe in a real tangible devil. But there is one.
Oh, yeah. No, the next thing, the 3 parts policy that they had adopted there, the second one was to find a way of being able to get total control of people's minds. And that would be done by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introduce it as a new science for the benefit of mankind.
So part of what the high priest told you was Satan's strategy to take total control of people's minds.
They felt that by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introducing it as a new science for the benefit of mankind, they could then use people of great renown, educators, people of capacity, that would do great things, such as supposedly regress people in time to former lives that they had. And of course, after the session is over, the person would not know a thing about ancient history, and the person that she or he has talked about performing, certain deeds, we'll say 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. But this was their strategy. Now, what this would do for the thing is this, that it would create in the minds of the general public, solidly set in the mind of the general public, an unwavering trust in that great deception. In other words, people could, they would believe it. This person was hypnotized, was regressing time to, former lives, and did this and did that, and no deception. Maybe Alexander the Great, we'll say, and some of the generals and people like that. And the person, after the session is over, comes out of hypnotism, and he or she doesn't know what she's talking about. So now this would be a way of de-Christianizing the Western world through the avenue of mysticism. Now the time came when Lucifer decided that he had to choose a person to initiate this thing. And Franz Mesmer, which was an Austrian physician, was chosen. Because
the priest told you all of this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because he was most capable. Mesmer originated a theory called animal magnetism, later on named mesmerism. Mesmer was led by the spirits to believe, and this is what the priest said, was led by the spirits to believe that certain persons have a magnetic influence within themselves, so to speak, that would cause them to have great power over other persons, even to the point of placing them into a trance. And at that time, that was readily accepted by people in general at the time that Mesmer lived. So people realize, that some people got a capacity to put you into a trance. That's the way. Now, by the time that he died, in 1815, a lot of the physicians in Europe were using hypnotism as a means of anesthesia.
Now, hypnotism is the same as mesmerism?
That's right. Okay. So mesmerism that's been developed to a higher degree of refinement. And the priest went on saying that the plan of Satan to deceive the human family this way, he says, is the most intriguing thing to his mind. And he went on saying how it was going to be brought about. He said that a fellow by the name of Darwin and another fellow by the name of Thomas Henry Huxley would be used by the spirits because in their childhood they had been hypnotized by medical doctors, and they figured that they would be real good subjects to lead the people into this belief that they had, that Satan wanted to bring into people's lives.
Now, what were those 3 points again, Roger? The 3 things were, number 1, that they did not want Satan did not want the human family to think that he or his angels existed.
Right.
The second point that you made had to do with taking control of people's minds.
That's right.
The third point was what?
Was to destroy the Bible without burning it.
Okay.
See?
And what was the strategy on that?
On that, it was very interesting. Because after the Great General Council, it was decided that Satan would tutor Charles Darwin personally in setting up the principles of his theories of evolution. He was tutored by Lucifer himself, fallen Lucifer. And at that time, it was understood, Satan and his spirit counselors understood, that if a person was led to believe in the theory of evolution, it would, in his life, destroy completely the creation week of the Bible, the fall of man, and plan of redemption. It would do away with it.
In one fell swoop.
Yeah. Now, he made a unique statement. He said that according to the spirits, anyone that teaches a theory of evolution is considered to be a minister of a great religious system. See, they call it a religious system, the theory of evolution, because it is a system of schooling people and getting them to disqualify themselves from being members of Christ's kingdom. And he said that every teacher of that theory is recognized by the spirits as a person of great value and receives a very special unction from Satan himself, giving great power to induce spiritual blindness, to convince and convert. 3 capacities are given to those teachers of the theory. Then, that's not all. The priest says that Satan considers the teachers of the theory of evolution to be so valuable to him that in the sight of all the inhabitants of the galaxies, he assigns a retinue of bright, beautiful angels to follow that educator all the remainder of his life. And that in the sight of the inhabitants of the galaxies is the greatest honor that he can bestow upon his workers, all mankind, and to, until the controversy is finished. That was quite enlightening.
Now, the high priest was talking just sort of like a preacher would talk up front. Was he enthusiastic? Did he seem like he had bought into this and was excited about it?
Oh yeah, he believed it 100%, no question about it, so everything.
Why would he be so excited about spirits trying to deceive human beings? Because obviously out of this council of the 1700s, deception was a major part of the strategy. Why?
Well, he says deception is like politics. You believe in one candidate, the other person believes in the other candidate, and they're fighting to get the position, and it's just a matter of who's going to be the smartest.
So this high priest was almost talking to your group in an evangelistic fervor.
Oh yeah, because he figures that he's going to be one of the higher ups in the great kingdom.
Okay.
He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing. He said among the inhabitants of the galaxies, and he says our master was misunderstood, and God did not bear with him like he does with people that make mistakes today. So we're in a warfare, good against evil, and we happen to be the evil ones, but we're not that bad. He says, I look at this business between the force of good and evil. He says, you believe in one person believes in God, and the other one believes in Lucifer. It's like politics.
So the great controversy is real, and you heard someone talk about it that's on the other side.
And to these people, they are sold to the fact that Christ will not return to this planet with power and great glory. He's going to abdicate all claims to the planet, because the high priest once said that Christ will abdicate all claims to the planet because he knows that it is lawfully and rightfully Satan's. And at that time he says, Lucifer, you mentioned Lucifer a lot of times, but he mentions Satan also. He says, the master, usually they like to talk about the master will resurrect his people from the graves.
Roger, your friend George took you and Roland to this mansion where people worshipped the demons. What was it like there? What kind of people were there?
Well, it was a big surprise for me, as I kind of made up in my mind an idea that they were going to be rough-looking characters. But as we entered the place, I was amazed to see that they were all very well dressed, well mannered, and that a lot of the people, as we were being introduced to people, were professionals, doctors, attorneys, a lot of business people.
So how did you feel when you walked into that room?
I felt that these people had power, and they had a lot of it.
Did that attract you?
Yes and no.
You had mixed feelings about it?
I had mixed feelings about it, yeah.
Now, of the group that was there that night, 60, 70 people I think you've mentioned before.
Yeah, it varied.
How many of those were people who were hardcore members, and how many of them were new inductees?
Well, we were the only two youngsters there, so to speak.
You and your friend. And how old were you at that time, Roger?
I was about 20.
20 years old.
Yeah, 20 years old.
Did you have a feeling of awe over the fact that you had been chosen?
Yes, in a way. And then I got thinking about this. When am I going to have to pay the price? The cost. My parents had brought me up like this. If you get involved with evil, you're going to reap what you sowed. So you want to be upright in life. And if you associate with evildoers, they'll probably land you in jail or somewhere else that you wouldn't want to be. So there's always a price to be paid.
So you had that little something maybe instilled by your mother and father a long time ago that kept you from making that full commitment.
Now, one of the things that really amazed me and shocked me and made me sick at heart is when the priests talk about Christian idolatry.
What is Christian idolatry? The priest mentioned that word.
Yeah.
Tell us what he said, Roger.
He said that Christian idolatry is the most grandiose or great deception that has ever been brought upon the human family, upon mankind. And he says, and he boasted, that demon spirits are continually defiling Christian churches through the avenue of necromancy by using a form of spirit worship that involves hundreds of millions of Christians into idolatry without their being aware of it.
Now, what is necromancy? Define necromancy for me.
Their belief, popular belief of necromancy, is to conjure the spirits of the dead.
So that you can speak with someone who has died.
Right.
Like the seance that you originally went to was the practice of necromancy.
Now, The priest says that the superstition is brought about in only one way. Through the deceptive belief that man has an immortal soul that lives on after death. And he said that constitutes idolatry through necromancy. So he says there are hundreds of millions of Christians that are practicing idolatry while they think they're glorifying God. See?
Because they believe that the soul is immortal.
Yeah.
They may not be talking to the supposed spirits of the dead.
Contrary to popular belief, necromancy does not consist of conjuring the spirits of the dead. The reason being that man is totally mortal and does not possess an immortal soul. So, who are they talking to? He says, the friendly demon spirits that have always found over the centuries great delight in impersonating apparitions, departed loved ones, and persons of great renown.
Now, friendly demon spirits.
Friendly demon spirits.
Are there more than one kind of demon spirits, Roger?
Well, there's three main divisions, and then there's divisions within those divisions. You have the friendly demon spirits that seem to have the finesse and the refinement, and they're not upset about what happened when they were thrown out of heaven, from what I gather. Then you have the warriors. They like to bring misery and destruction in the lives of people. Then you have the oppressors. And the oppressors are the real wicked spirits that hate God with all of their, the Creator with all of their might. You know. So he went on explaining. He says, now, necromancy is in reality a belief, a religious belief. People believe that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence than they had when they were alive. Also that they are in a position and have the capacity to help the living here on earth. See? Then he said, he says this is where things get really interesting. He said, according to the great master, a person does not have to supposedly call upon the spirits of the dead to receive help, you see, to be involved in necromancy. All he needs to do is to believe in life after death. Because he said, necromancy is the belief that man is human, as a human being, has an immortal soul. So anybody that believes that man has an immortal soul is involved in necromancy. It's that simple. That's the way he explained it. Yeah.
So how does that constitute idolatry?
By people believing that they are either talking to the saints, you see, the spirits of the dead saints, or a dead relative, or a dead person of some type. And you take, for instance, like Loretta Lynn. She says on national television, and I have the date on it, that I heard it myself. She said that she was made successful in her singing career by a dear friend of hers that was the same age as she, and died when she was 18 years of age. And Loretta was trying to get into the singing world, you know, but she says, I had no success at all. Until one night I was sitting in bed reading a book. And she says, who walks right through the wall but my friend, the spirit of my friend? And she says, Loretta, I'm going to make you a very famous person in singing Western country music, and I will be with you all the time. Trust me. And she says she had a big concert once, and she was coming down with this bad cold. And she thought that her voice was going to give. She talked to her spirit and felt that she was going to be helped. And she got in there on the stage and she started to sing, and right in the middle of where she really needed the power, no power at all. And her spirit friend tapped her on the shoulder and started to sing for her. She said her voice went through me, the power. See?
And you saw this in a television documentary?
Yeah. This was, I believe, 1976 it took place. Now, the priest explained that when people believe in this business, they are actually opening themselves to be completely deceived by demon spirits, because it gives the demon spirits an opportunity to impersonate the dead, see, and for people to believe their lies. And the priest says that thrills first of all, it says it brings the great master the respect and the reverence that is due to his great name. And it makes all the other spirits exceedingly happy because they are the ones that have worked to lead people to believe in life after death. You see? And they rejoice. And that's the extent of what
Christian idolatry is all about.
Roger, when I was a teenager back in the 1970s, I remember a song that came out talking about the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, we've seen the development of the New Age. And I wondered if, back when you were involved in spirit worship, if they talked about New Age at all.
Oh yes, it was a big thing that was coming up. One of the major deceptions of the last days. And the priest told us, we talked quite a while, and then he said, could I have a little bit more of your time? I want to do something very fascinating. He says the grain plain, the master's grain plain, for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. So we continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grain plain is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because it says spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it. And he went on saying that they will claim to have out-of-body experiences. Are you familiar with out-of-body experiences?
I've read about it.
In other words, so there's some persons are supposed to be able to, they believe in their immortal soul.
Astral soul projection.
Yes, right. Goes into different parts of the world and sees things and come back and then they write all about it.
I've heard of that.
So, due to the fact that the millions of the earth, people, believe in people having an immortal soul, it has to be readily accepted when the spirits will, through a trance medium, converse with influential people of the land, you see.
Now, what is a trance medium?
It's a channeler today.
What is known today as a channeler?
Channeler, yeah.
Okay.
Shirley MacLaine's experience of getting involved in spiritism and with the supposed inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies, I taped the whole thing 3 hours.
And you were hearing the fulfillment of what this high priest had said 45 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So he went on explaining about the fact that the spirits will show themselves willing to give valuable guidance that will not only help people avoid the destruction of the planet, but it will cause them to enter into a higher state of existence. For instance, he said the spirits will promise, and this is a big word, promise, that if their recommendations are followed carefully, they will usher in a glorious new age of peace and prosperity, and there'll be there'll be no more wars, you see. There'll be no more famines. There'll be no more people getting unhappy with one another. Neighbors will love neighbor, and social unrest will not take place no more. It'll be there'll be perfect happiness for 1,000 years. That's what the Spirit is going to promise.
Almost like the Garden of Eden created all over again.
And now we find that a lot of preachers are preaching the great age of glorious new age of victory over wars, victory over social unrest, victory over famines, and victory over all kinds of...
and he used the words New Age to describe what was coming.
It would be a glorious new age, yeah. And this is exactly what the movement is all about today. And he went on and said, as I said earlier, that as life on this planet becomes more and more difficult, and calamities will strike the planet more and more frequently, the spirits at that time are going to put all their effort to impress religious leaders, to bring before the masses of the earth the sacredness of Sunday. See? He will teach Sunday sacredness. And with the religious leaders, looking forward to 1,000 years of perfect peace on earth, they will put all their effort into it. Then laws will be passed by governments. One person asked, what's going to happen about people that don't believe in the Spirit's recommendation? The priest said, that's no problem at all. Laws will be passed by governments that will force people to go along with it, regardless of whether they believe in it or not. And he says the law enforcement officers will explain to people, make it clear that such a law is necessary to assure the well-being of all people. So laws will be passed, no effort at all. And then he went on and he said about the fact that the vulnerability of the sun, which in ages past was such an irritant to the Creator. All of these great nations and other nations, of smaller ones, were all involved in sun worship. And in those centuries, the Creator found that teaching of worship of the sun to be a terrible irritant. And he said, it is going again to take place, but not in worshiping the sun, in remembering Sunday to keep it holy. He made a statement I will never forget. He says, by the observance of the day upon which the master, Satan, has placed the unction of his authority and power, he receives homage, regardless of whom people claim to worship. Isn't that something? So, can you understand now why I had 28 Bible studies in 1 week and started to go to church on Sabbath? And I never missed since until I became sick.
The issue of a day of worship came up in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Was Sunday the only day mentioned?
Well, you see, the priest mentioned, yes, about the fact Satan has chosen Sunday as his day. The Creator has chosen the 7th day of the week. Lucifer has chosen to call his day the first day of the week, Sunday. See? And regardless of what people claim to worship, worshiping God, the Creator, by observing that day, that particular day, they are bringing homage and respect.
Now, at that time in your life, you were 20 years old or so.
Mm-hmm.
Had you ever heard of a Seventh-day Adventist?
Never in my life.
In that
He
meeting,
didn't talk about Seventh-day Adventist. He talked strictly about Adventist.
well, they just talked, but they did. The word Adventist
Yeah.
was mentioned.
The priest was telling us that necromancy, as I mentioned earlier, is the belief that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence, etc. And he says, for centuries, friendly demon spirits have worked diligently to establish and uphold in the religious convictions of all people the belief that man has an immortal soul. See? Then he boasted about the fact that the master was so smart in that he had deceived the whole world, even in this age of great scientific knowledge and understanding. Then one person put his hand up, and that priest says, yeah, yes, you want to say something? He says, what about the Adventists? You can't count them deceived regarding the state of the dead. And I got a question. What about, how come that they can't be brought under the great deception? The priest said, you're right. I apologize, says here, I made a mistake. When I said that all the millions of people living on the face of this planet, everybody you know, was honoring the great master. I forgot the Adventists. There's so few in number, when you figure the billions and all people, I didn't even think of mentioning it. So I'm sorry. Then he says, secondly, the reason why they can't be brought into the great deception, let me explain about it. Now he said, my next statement is going to upset some of you. But what I'm telling you is the honest truth. It is factual. It's reality. The fact that the Adventists observe the biblical Sabbath of creation and reverence the Creator on that day it makes it impossible for the spirits to deceive them. They are given very special help and great spiritual insight. And he said, under these conditions, they are not ordinary people. And that stayed with me, man, just like this. And when I heard the word Adventist, when Sarah told me later on, which we're going to cover later, I asked him, I said, what denomination do you belong to? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. What's that again? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. I said, is that the same thing as Adventist? Oh yeah, he says, a lot of people call us the Adventists. They don't talk about the 70s. Same thing. Boy, I was interested.
I bet you were. Now,
I wanted to know what his Bible said.
Yeah, I bet you did. Because that was the one group that under question only, the high priest of the demonic worship house.
Yeah.
The thing that he had said to you was, this is the one group that can't be deceived.
That's right.
And so somewhere back inside that that resistance you had came out, and you awoke.
A few months later, that experience, unique experience, was instrumental in helping me make a decision for Christ. And also, I had no hesitation to join myself to God's commandment-keeping people because of the fact that I knew what kind of people they were. And after having had 28 Bible studies in 1 week, I started to keep the Sabbath, fit forever. But you see, the time that I had these Bible studies, 4 hours per evening, we started at 7 o'clock and finished at 11 o'clock at night. We had this Bible study similar to what you showed me the other day, that you have in your pocket. The Bible studies were about an hour. There were questions, and then you looked at the verses that they gave you in the Bible, and you had your answer. It was so fantastic. And the Spirit of God was really ministering to me the graces of redemption. Every moment of all those Bible studies was precious. Precious, precious, precious.